So you saw the new Fantastic Four movie and you want to know a little bit more about the female Silver Surfer? Well, you're in the right spot. In this video, we're going to tell you the entire history of Shalla-Bal, a cosmic romance. Now, to begin, the Shalla-Bal that we're talking about comes from the mainline Marvel universe, aka Earth 616. So allow us to go right ahead and say this, that Shalla-Bal isn't necessarily known for riding the cosmic surfboard like in the Fantastic Four First Steps movie, but her connections to Marvel's so-called OG Silver Surfer are more solid than you'd think. For one, Shalla is a native of the planet Zenn-La, just like Norrin Radd. As a matter of fact, it was during one of the darkest periods in Norrin Radd's life that we first met Shalla-Bal. Norrin's mother had just passed on to the great beyond, and as per the traditions of their planet, Shalla approached to serve more or less as a shoulder to cry on. But Norrin isn't exactly the kind of Zenn-Lavian who's got any game, so instead of putting his best foot forward, our guy ended up making Shalla feel like unsolicited help. But in truth, Norrin almost instantly fell head over heels for her. In spite of his admittedly cold demeanor, Shalla wasn't put off by this. Their relationship only further deepened when Shalla proved just how much of a ride or die she could be when all the other Zenn-Lavians mocked Norrin for his dream of becoming a space traveler. Because to Shalla, this was more than just an impressive aspiration. Their feelings for each other just grew from here, and it didn't take long before Shalla and Norrin became a couple. However, just like most relationships, Norrin and Shalla were far from perfect. Sure, Shalla was certain that she loved Norrin more than anything, and Norrin felt the same, but the problem is he was just too absorbed in his own little world. This made Shalla-Bal feel more or less abandoned, but still stuck to her guns, and the two stayed together, for better or for worse. But, well, things did get worse, like way worse, when none other than the planet devourer Galactus showed up in front of Zenn-La's doorstep. You all probably know what happened next. Galactus wanted to eat Norrin and Shalla's homeworld, so Norrin cut a deal with the cosmic gourmand to spare Zenn-La in exchange for becoming his herald, the Silver Surfer. This resulted in Norrin and Shalla's relationship being put on indefinite hold. Shalla didn't even know if she'd ever see the love of her life again, and considering the life of a planet devourer's herald requires a whole lot of traveling, she wasn't willing to bet that she'd see him anytime soon. To make matters worse, Shalla and the entirety of Zenn-La got roped into a cosmic contest between the Grandmaster and the Collector. We won't go too much into this, but all you should know is that it involves time travel, which brought heroes like the Hulk to around the same moment when Norrin first became the Silver Surfer. You can't keep a good girl down. If you thought having Galactus whisk away your boyfriend was already bad, wait until you find out about the extra-dimensional entities called the Other. The Other would eventually arrive on Zenn-La and literally lay waste to each and every Zenn-Lavian they could get their hands on. And well, Shalla-Bal just couldn't get a break. She was one of the poor souls who fell victim to the Other. Things got so bad that even Galactus felt scandalized by the whole event. But here's the thing, Galactus is far from your regular old supervillain. Think of the guy as more of a cosmic necessity. After witnessing the destruction of Zenn-La, the planet devourer took it upon himself to use his own powers to literally bend reality and bring the planet back to life, effectively resurrecting Shalla along the process. Now, you can look at this in a couple of ways. On one hand, you wouldn't be completely wrong to think that Galactus actually cared for Norrin enough to bring back his girlfriend and the rest of the homeworld to life. On the other hand, Galactus knew that he had to do this if he wanted Norrin to continue working for him as a herald. It's a you scratch my back, I scratch yours sort of deal. Eventually, Shalla-Bal would arrive on the planet Earth during a time when the Dark Lord Mephisto tried to finesse his way towards the Silver Surfer. Mephisto cut a deal with Shalla where she allowed her to see Norrin again in exchange for her obedience. But you can always trust that the devil of the Marvel Comics world is going to give you a bargain that maybe you didn't expect. Yep, he did send Shalla-Bal to Earth, but this ultimately led her to a second death aboard the ship she was riding on the way to Earth. Thankfully, Norrin caught wind of all this and used his powers to bring Shalla back to life. Then the two were reunited and lived happily ever after. Just kidding. Mephisto totally went nuts on the two Zenn-Lavians and decided to kidnap Shalla, taking her to his realm. Of course, Norrin followed suit and confronted the Dark Lord to get back his girlfriend. This adventure ended on a bittersweet note as Norrin and Shalla were forced to become separated again, with each of them knowing full well that the only way to take down Mephisto was for Shalla to be sent back to their homeworld. Still, it was a win no matter how costly it might have been. A love that crossed stars. In time, Shalla-Bal returned to her and Norrin's home planet, but her most recent reunion with her boyfriend just made Shalla more determined to be reunited with him forever. With no other option to locate Norrin, Shalla-Bal enlisted the help of a scummy Zenn-Lavian scientist named Yarrow Gort. Yarrow was this sniveling opportunist whose desire for Shalla was only trumped by his desire to save his own skin, no matter the cost. So both Shalla and Yarrow eventually found themselves boarding a spaceship bound for Earth just so he could prove to her that there was no way she could get reunited with Norrin. This happened during a time when the Silver Surfer was doing superhero work on Earth. Specifically, Norrin was busy dealing with a conflict in South America, and as if on cue, Shalla and Yarrow's ship crash-landed in the same area. A military man known as El Capitan then took the two Zenn-Lavians prisoner. Being the weasel that he was, Yarrow decided to cut a deal with El Capitan, his life in exchange for Zenn-Lavian tech that El Capitan thought would be enough to take down the Silver Surfer. Long story short, Shalla-Bal ended up taking a bullet for Norrin when Yarrow decided to demonstrate his Zenn-Lavian weapons to the South American army as part of their deal. Norrin would witness Shalla-Bal get shot and would absolutely go nuts on Yarrow with his new authoritarian friends. In the aftermath, Norrin realized that Earth's tech had nowhere near the capabilities of healing Shalla's wounds, so he made another hard call. Norrin sent Shalla back to their ship and set the coordinates for Zenn-La so she could get the treatment she needed. And again, these two lovers were separated. Not long after, Mephisto would be at it again when he tried to start some smoke with the Silver Surfer. To do this, he tricked Norrin into coming back to Zenn-La so that he could be reunited with Shalla. But upon his return to his home planet, Mephisto sprung his plan by kidnapping Shalla and using her as leverage to force Norrin into becoming his lackey. Left with no other choice, Norrin agreed to his proposition. Mephisto's first order was for the Silver Surfer to lay waste to S.H.I.E.L.D. However, what Mephisto didn't know was that Norrin had already been making his own moves to free Shalla-Bal from the Dark Lord's grasp. In the end, Mephisto and the Silver Surfer had themselves a good old-fashioned fight. The problem was that Norrin still failed to locate Shalla after this, because in the aftermath of their battle, Mephisto actually brought Shalla-Bal to Latveria. There, the one and only Dr. Doom would use his own resources to brainwash Shalla into thinking that she was a loyal Latverian servant named Helena. Of course, Doom also took this opportunity to use Shalla as leverage in order to force Norrin to work for him. Again, Norrin was forced to do the Doom's bidding, specifically to face off against the Surfer's longtime friends, the Fantastic Four. Now, Doom might be smart, but he's sorely lacking in the friends department. Instead of doing what he was told, Norrin decided to enlist the help of Marvel's first family to deal with Doom. Norrin soon found himself reunited with Shalla once again, but Doom's brainwashing techniques worked all too well. Shalla, or Helena, didn't have the slightest idea who Norrin was. On the bright side, the Fantastic Four and the Silver Surfer did take down Doom, and no one knew that Mephisto had been doing this on the sidelines this whole episode, just biding his time to mess with Shalla and Norrin yet again. Now, Norrin and Galactus had a huge falling out right after this. Like the scorned employer that he was, Galactus then decided to cut all of the Silver Surfer's benefits, starting by wrecking all of Zenn-La. But like we always say, Galactus might be a hungry boy, but he's far from a basic villain. In the fact, he did all of the Zenn-Lavians a solid by allowing them to evacuate the planet first before Galactus chowed down on it. Norrin arrived on what remained Zenn-La soon after, only to discover that Shalla had been kidnapped once again by, you guessed it, Mephisto. Norrin then found out that Shalla had been taken back to Latveria, so our boy made a beeline for Doom's domain. In the end, Norrin did manage to rescue his girlfriend once more, but a permanent reunion was still off the table. Shalla-Bal ultimately went back to Zenn-La, but this time Norrin made sure to share his power cosmic with her, so that she could use it to bring back life on their home planet. But there was another benefit to this as well. Giving this power gives Shalla a fighting chance against whoever decides to kidnap her next. Everything's coming up Shalla. You probably have noticed this this by now, but Shalla has been more or less a stereotypical damsel in distress up until this point. Well, that ended when she arrived on Zenn-La and used the power cosmic coursing through her veins to revitalize the entire planet. In turn, the Zenn-Lavians hailed Shalla-Bal as both a hero and leader of their race. From there, they installed her as Zenn-La's empress, a position that Shalla didn't want, but nonetheless accepted for the sake of her people. Around the same time, Norrin's exile on Earth finally ended, so he decided to travel back to Zenn-La to finally continue his relationship with the love of his life. Unfortunately, their schedules just didn't really line up. She had become too burdened by her role as empress and simply didn't have the time or energy to spend time with Norrin. So the two broke up in a relatively amicable fashion, but make no mistake, this whirlwind romance is far from over. But for now, Shalla-Bal was busy leading an entire planet. She would soon find herself embroiled on an intergalactic conflict that involved the Kree, Skrulls, and the Kotati. Oh, and our girl might have been an empress at this point, but old habits die hard. This whole adventure saw Shalla getting kidnapped by the Kree, but at least she wasn't as passive as before, because it was also due to Shalla's efforts that a conspiracy with the Kree ranks was uncovered, which ultimately led to her rescue and then return to her homeworld. Sometime later, Zenn-La would fall captive to an intergalactic warlord known as the Enslaver. Shalla then found herself turning from empress to concubine when the Enslaver forced her to join his harem. But the Enslaver bit off more than he could chew when he tried to start some smoke with planet Earth. This put him in direct conflict with Norrin and Marvel's mightiest heroes, which effectively put a stop to his tyrannical rule. In turn, Zenn-La and Shalla-Bal were freed once more. She and Norrin even had a short yet sweet reunion in the aftermath of this whole ordeal. Next, Shalla came across a powerful entity called the Great One. During this meeting, the Great One offered Shalla a sweet deal that involved sending all of Zenn-La into his own mind, which in turn would give the planet a state of near utopic bliss. Now, the Great One's mind is actually within a different plane of existence you can call the ethereal realm, and true to his word, Zenn-La did experience an age of peace and prosperity after Shalla-Bal agreed to his deal. However, Norrin inadvertently messed things up when he tried to visit Zenn-La, just because he was feeling all sad and nostalgic for it. This resulted in a bitter battle when the Great One registered Norrin as a threat to his realm. Their confrontation ended with the Great One's demise, which in turn caused all of reality to go all topsy-turvy. Even worse, Norrin's actions inadvertently led to Shalla becoming trapped in between the real world and what was once the Great One's ethereal realm. What nobody knew at the time was that Shalla-Bal's soul had been sent to their old nemesis Mephisto's native realm. Back in the real world, all of Zenn-La understandably shunned Norrin for screwing with their golden age within the hands of the Great One's mind. Of course, Norrin felt absolutely devastated after realizing what he did, especially to Shalla. So Norrin hopped on his trademark surfboard and began looking for her. He soon allied with Adam Warlock and the Infinity Watch after they were able to ping the location of Shalla's soul. Our heroes then went to Mephisto's turf, and as you'd expect, another fight happened between the Cosmic Warriors and the Dark Lord. In the end, Norrin and the Infinity Watch successfully retrieved Shalla's soul, which they then used to resurrect her and bring the damsel back to Zenn-La. Shalla-Bal comes into her own. Sometime later, we'd find out that Shalla had more or less moved on from her longtime boyfriend Norrin. She didn't move too far though, because she then dated Norrin's half-sibling, Norrin Radd. And as Shalla put it, she did love Norrin, but she needed a man who was actually there. You know, not one who's always on his surfboard hanging 10 across the stars. From there, Shalla-Bal went on to make moves of her own. She eventually became her planet's keeper of the Great Truth, which is like Zenn-La's own version of a cultural ambassador to other planets. Let's just say that Shalla became too committed to her job as a keeper of the Great Truth because she had it in her head to spread Zenn-La's ways across the universe regardless of the cost. In fact, Shalla-Bal got so into it that she even brainwashed Ben Grimm into becoming her own herald as part of this mission. Not long after that, Shalla had her sights on Earth. Of course, the Silver Surfer was having none of this. After all, what Shalla-Bal called cultural exchange was actually more similar to hostile planetary takeovers, so he got involved with his ex. Shalla-Bal managed to gain some initial ground against the opposition by brainwashing a few of Earth's champions to fight against Norrin, but the Silver Surfer was just too much of a unit to fall in battle like that. Ultimately, Norrin saw that the only way to stop Shalla's bonkers plan was to use all of the power cosmic running through his veins to destroy Zenn-La's Illuminatrix, a powerful device that serves as the planet's receptacle for all of Zenn-La's history and culture. Seems like an obvious conclusion to make, right? This inevitably led to Norrin literally erasing Zenn-La and its archives from the face of the cosmos, almost as if it never existed. This whole ordeal depleted all of Norrin's strength, which forced him to be admitted to the hospital for some time. However, Shalla-Bal and the rest of Zenn-La's citizens had a bone to pick with the man who basically wiped out their cultural history and heritage in one fell swoop. So Shalla and her forces went straight for Earth with the sole purpose of giving Norrin his comeuppance. Earth's mightiest heroes did their best to protect Norrin from Shalla, but she still managed to reach her ex in spite of it. With old lovers coming face to face with such hostility, you'd think that Shalla would have just ended it all for Norrin. But no, Shalla did something far worse. She revoked Norrin's Zenn-Lavian citizenship and pretty much branded him unwelcome on their home planet. And with that, the hostilities between Zenn-La and Earth ended as Shalla and her forces went back home.